Hi everyone, and welcome to your daily oracle reading. The challenge, Guardian of Fire. This card has everything to do with passion, but in the sense that we have to be the guardians of our own passions, which basically means that we have to temper it. We have to make sure that it's always healthy, that the fires of passion are always burning just the right intensity, not to hurt us or other people, but also bright enough, hot enough so they can fuel our inner suns, so to speak. Now, since this card is in challenge position, it might represent the shadow expression of passion, especially that passion which we never could express or act upon in a healthy manner. So, this leads us to the Freudian version of depression, where Freud thought that depression is actually anger, rage, severe dissatisfaction, which our beings, which our psyche simply represses, simply chooses not to express in order not to hurt our whole being, so to speak. So that repression, where our being doesn't allow the rage, the frustration, the anger, the assertive energies to come to the surface, that creates an inner conflict, which results in depression, which results in feeling under the weather, procrastination, feeling lethargic, feeling very melancholic, the average signs of depression. But for some people, this goes even deeper because it is those unexpressed passions, unexpressed desires, the fires burning deep inside them, which were repressed, and it twisted their minds a little bit because what it told them is that they're victims, and all their lives were built on becoming and being the victim, so to speak. When you stand from the position of a victim, when you stand from a position of someone who has been hurt and suffered greatly, it doesn't matter the causes, it doesn't matter who it is to blame. What matters is that all your desires are actually built on what you haven't been able to experience, what hasn't been able to make you happy, whatever hasn't been able to feed your heart, to feed your soul with those fiery energies that can make you feel alive, that can make you feel be relevant, happy that you matter either for someone else or for yourself. So basically, this card invites us to take a deep look inside of us and see which one of our passions is built on authentic love, authentic attraction, what we wish to have and experience in our lives, and which one is built on negative, unfulfilled desires, which became a passive obsession, and it's so well hidden, so well concealed in our subconscious that it takes a lot of inner work, self-exploration, to see where it is that we have healthy desires and where it is where we stand from a position of a victim. So everything that we do, every single gesture that we express is ultimately meant to compensate us for everything that we didn't have the chance to live through at the moment when we desired it mostly. So some things in life are totally healthy because they're based on true love, true attraction, something that would make our hearts, make our whole beings resonate with happiness, with fulfillment, with gratitude, deep appreciation that we had the opportunity and the chance. But other desires are much, much darker, they're much more twisted, they're basically obsessions running in our subconscious minds, and these have to be identified, because if we allow them to run freely in a very concealed manner, where we might not even know of this, where we might not even know that certain feelings, certain dissatisfactions, certain depressions are actually caused by those ruling our beings, if we get the chance to witness them, to become aware, we can also have power over them. We can also have influence and a saying if we allow them to run in the background of our minds and our emotional worlds, or if we press the pause button and maybe the delete button and just remove them as it is, because those are unhealthy expectations basically. If they're deeply rooted inside of us, and if the obsessive desire is not removed, it just like a weed, just like a destructive plant, so to speak, it's going to grow, it's going to get stronger, its roots are going to start touching the soul, and when it touches the soul, it absorbs the power of the soul, and it makes us want to enact it. So this can also lead to very passive, hidden, concealed, egocentric tendencies, because if everything in life, every action we take in life, everything we project in life is about our unfulfilled desires, where we seek to compensate ourselves, to make ourselves forcefully happy for the wounds that we suffered, in order to compensate them, in order to soothe them, well then a life built on that, a life built on depression and on unhealthy expectations, is never going to lead to freedom, but rather it's going to lead us to be slaves of our own shadows, our own unhealthy expectations and our own wounds. And that is why when the powers and the fires, basically the guardian of fire, right, of obsession are burning with very strong, very hot flames, then it is our responsibility to temper them. It is our responsibility to make sure that our futures and our lives are not based on something that we are obsessed about, because that means that just like a trauma, a part of our souls is stuck in the past, where it's still trying to get what it desires. It's still trying to fulfill that desire, that obsessive expectation, so to speak. And that leaves little place for the future, that leaves little place for appreciation, to appreciate everything that you're doing and you have in your life in the present moment. So a healthy balance definitely needs to be obtained, and that is why this card is challenging you to become a very responsible, a very diligent, and a very open-minded guardian, as in to become a psychologist for yourself, where whatever you have in your mind, in your subconscious, in your heart, so to speak, because passion and love are matters of the heart, so you can find a balance, you can find an equilibrium, a healthy equilibrium for all of this, and that gives you, that leads you and that guides you to the opportunity of this reading, which is nothing more than the Ace of Air, the card of freedom. Now, freedom takes many shapes and forms. It can manifest in totally different ways, but there's a big difference between when our freedom is restricted from external factors, for example, the present moment, when it's the rules and regulations we need to uphold. So it is not that much our inner limitations that are taking away our sense of liberty, but it is basically external reality. So since we're all pretty much in the same boat, we don't have the tendency to point the finger at each other to find who is to blame, because who is to blame is definitely on the world stage, as in centralized power. So this is pretty straightforward. And even though if it can leave a trauma for some people, definitely, but that trauma is basically the world itself, the era itself, the times we live in. But when those limitations are internal limitations, when it is your unhealthy desires that are keeping you in chains, enslaved, for example, unfulfilled sexual desires, fetishes, unfulfilled romantic fantasies, failed relationships which you simply cannot process and accept. You cannot comprehend that the person who you once loved greatly didn't feel the same way for you, and you were a victim, more or less. So all of these things need to be eliminated, because if we keep on feeding them, if we allow the trauma and the unhealthy desire to spring roots into our soul, well then it may be too late. Now that will require a lot of effort, a lot of suffering and pain to rip out the roots from there, so we still have a chance. So that is why the Ace of Air is the opportunity, because we have all the options, we have all the opportunities in the present moment to do some inner work and to remove those desires, those aggressive fire energies, or those embers of fire energy, which are ultimately guiding into a nightmarish life. Because even if we would get those desires, even if our obsession would be fulfilled, so to speak, even if a magical genie would just grant our wishes, the moment when those desires are granted, it's even more painful than when it runs as a background depression, because it leaves us so empty, so hollow inside, that true love, true passion, true happiness, so to speak, at that point would already be totally alien to us. We wouldn't even know where to begin with. When we get our obsessions, well, then that is the moment when life ends, because your story is over. You got what you wanted, you got what you sacrificed all that soul energy for, you got the triumph when you were fighting against the universe or your own faith or your own soul to get obsessively whatever was not actually meant for you, whatever was not appropriate for you, or maybe it was appropriate for you but the timing wasn't right because you weren't mature enough to enjoy it, to appreciate it. So sometimes getting our obsessions is the true death, is the true sad ending to the story. So we can also appreciate when the universe invested all that effort, all that power into blocking us, into not allowing us to live in a very unhealthy way. So this is a perfect opportunity not only to appreciate it, to appreciate the divine intelligence which ultimately protected our freedom, which protected us from our own lives and from our own egos, so that we can get the chance to enter this present moment in history where this great restriction, the moment when the earth stood still, so to speak, is a blessing, because it's giving us the chance to remove all our inner limitations, all our obsessions, because society in itself is purging along with us. So this is not just where you're quarantined, so to speak, from a karmic perspective, and you do all that work, and other people around you just live their happy lives. No, this is the moment when all of us are doing the very same thing. There's no exception. So yes, we're all imprisoned in our lives, but we also do the same healing work, the same purging, and sharing with each other and being interconnected with each other is a massive inspirational energy, because when you become aware that another person, maybe a friend, a colleague of yours, a neighbor of yours, or someone you used to know in the distant past, all of a sudden tells you that they're doing the same thing as you, that their lives are exactly playing out the same way as yours, you feel that less alone, you feel that much more supported, and you feel the miraculous vibes of this present karmic moment when the universe is working extremely hard for all of us. So on one hand, yes, it provides the world with this turmoil, with all the different kind of multi-dimensional conflicting energies playing out at the same time. So this is COVID, this is the economic situation, the political crisis, the conspiracy theories, the shadow agenda, the shadow government, I don't know, Bill Gates, the vaccine, 5G, aliens, whatever, it doesn't matter, because all those things are multi-dimensional reality. For some people, that is exactly what's going on, and that is the most important theme of their lives in the present moment. So it is when many dimensions meet each other and become one, and chances are we can perfectly coexist even if we do not focus on the same themes. But of course, all those people who do focus on the same themes already form smaller groups and collectives, and if they get interconnected with each other, now that harmonizes everything. This is where freedom is real, freedom is authentic, even from a karmic perspective, because each and every individual and each and every group of individuals are actually allowed and invited to live their dramas, to live whatever is important to them. May it be 5G, may it be 5D Earth, may it simply be the very telluric way of going about all this coronavirus, as in just the simple scientific down-to-earth matters. It doesn't matter, you're allowed to live your own dimension and coexist with the dimension of other people, if this makes sense at all. So it would be truly wise, it would be truly inspired to use this opportunity and to do all the inner work that you feel and you are guided to do, because you're just freeing yourself. You're taking off your chains, you're taking off your shackles, you're disenslaving yourself, because after this ends, the world is going to be a little bit different. And as time passes, a lot more different. This is an inevitable change. So the more you work, the more you focus, the more you set your own seeds of intentions, the better chance you have to live the future you're comfortable with, and which offers you the freedom to live life and feel the way you desire, to feel and experience life the way it is most natural and comfortable to you personally. Resolution, 10 of Air. This card is really significant because it represents the end of a cycle. It represents, when from a karmic perspective, and even from the perspective of nature's cycle, Mother Nature's own karmic cycle, an era is ending right now. And that means that all of us, intellectually and ideologically, because it is the 10 of Air, so it's air element, and ideologies, points of view, principles have much to do with air. They have much to do with the sign of Aquarius, a sign which is going to be the superstar of the celestial show of this whole decade and even more, because Saturn is going to be staying there for the next 3 years. Jupiter is entering there in December, and ultimately in 2026, Pluto is also making its way there, and Pluto is going to stay in the sign of Aquarius for approximately 20 years. There is a lot of astrological and karmic emphasis on that sign, and since that sign has much to do with the future, because it is the sign of the future, this tells us that that is where we're going. That is going to be the most important theme playing out in our lives, both individually and as a collective, because we all need to embody the change. We all need to embrace our futures. This was like a big waiting game until this present moment, when all of us studied and have prepared to do a certain type of work to fulfill that type of true passion based on love, what the Guardian of Fire spoke about, and also the opportunity Days of Air gives us the freedom and the intellect to do that, because when your mind is free, well then almost everything is free, or it's going to lead you to true authentic freedom. And the 10 of Air is basically telling us that the time is coming when all of us need to embody that. May it be the passion in a very free and unconditional way, where our heart dictates what we do with our passion, and that ultimately is freedom. And all of us are heading into this future, but until we can actually step into it, closures need to take place in our lives and in the lives of the collective as well, for humankind as a whole. And those closures are inner ones. Everything else, for most people, has already been done, has already taken place karmically. So right now we have the power and the chance to do the final finishing touches so that we can truly embody our inner truth with no compromises, with no regrets, and most importantly, with no guilt in either way. Guilt for ourselves or blaming others, putting the guilt on another person, pointing fingers. And that is why forgiveness for the self and forgiveness to others and ultimately the whole universe is so very important. Because for some people, all of this turmoil and the personal drama has not that much to do with other people, with society, with the world, especially for ancient souls, really, really powerful ancient souls who have been born in the present era, who are living this through with us, because for them, they have the maturity to understand that it's no one's fault and that the universe goes on in cycles. They have all the knowledge and wisdom, yet emotionally, they might be still feeling a certain grudge, a certain inability to forgive the universe for, how should I say it, for putting them into this position, making their lives be the way it was, full of restrictions, and where society rejected them, where their normality was seen as something alien, as something negative. For the most ancient souls who have already been born with a certain kind of awareness, who were born awakened, who always had certain skills and talents which normal humans never had. Now for those, it was never that much about other people and the world and what we're doing to the planet and all that. It was about the divine, why the divine placed them in this era. Why them? Why not other people? Because someone who is born awakened, they also remember the main themes of their past lives, and when it becomes obvious to them that they have always sacrificed, that they have always strived for the greater good, when they always lived lives of faith and devotion, when they sacrificed everything for the divine, and still they are put into really hard and depressing lives. Now that leaves a trauma, that leaves a spiritual trauma, that leaves the empowerment of their shadows, because on one hand, yes, they can understand why, they can understand that only they're capable of handling this kind of life, so it's not a punishment, there's no hard feelings, there's nothing evil to it, there's no sacrificial lamb in their stories, because it all has a divine logic and they agreed to this. But that doesn't matter. Understanding their own situations doesn't mean that they have the ability to forgive, they have the ability to process it emotionally, because they need love. They need to be fed emotionally, and if the universe cannot provide that, well, then something has to provide that. So for the most ancient souls, the most awakened people, it's actually a conflict between them and the universe. And this is the moment when they can forgive the divine. And this is the moment when the divine can actually enter in their lives directly, almost personally, almost like taking a palpable shape and form and telling it to their faces, I'm sorry for the life you had, but there was no other way you could embrace your destiny. There was no other way you could become relevant in the future. And this is the future I wish for you to have, where you can perform all your great acts of whatever you studied or whatever you embody, but be happy at the same time. So yes, your past was a living hell, but that's why I made sure your future isn't gonna be a living hell. It's gonna be rather a dream that you always had, and now you're gonna get the chance to live it. So for the most ancient souls on the planet, who've been incarnated into our era, this is a time when they forgive the universe, when they forgive the divine, and that very second when they find forgiveness, they become perfectly in harmony, perfectly interconnected with their source, and it gives them infinite power. So for some people, this is an awakening, but for those people who've been awakened all their lives, this is a moment of empowerment. This is a moment when they're enlightened. This is a moment when they can express exactly who they are and what they came here to do. So when those ancient souls are going to be empowered, when they finish their cycles, when they abandon their past, when they say, oh, okay, I don't care that I suffered that much, it was worth it, I chose this is my mission. That moment in time, when this forgiveness, when this closure takes place, the changes in the world, the changes in outer reality are going to enter in a very direct manner. It's going to be like a cascade, like a chain of big karmic events, and chances are it's going to be the positive ones. It's going to be massive solutions, massive miracles, because as we can see right now, the negative part, the crisis had to come. But what follows a crisis? What follows the Tower card in the tarot? The star of fulfilled hope. And this is exactly what all of us are going to experience one way or another. And that is why it's so important to become free right now. In this second, this moment, we have to take off our shackles. We have to take off our chains, because otherwise we will never be able to live that future, no matter how powerful we are, regardless of our knowledge, our skills, our social position, our money. If we are still slaves, it doesn't matter who we are and what we did until this present moment, because that's still going to guarantee us a life of slavery. Because if we enslave ourselves, if the illusions enslave us, that can never lead to a healthy and beautiful and a future based on truth, so to speak. Well, thank you so much for listening. Have a blessed and wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.